Have you ever questioned the boundaries of friendship when a single moment makes everything feel uncertain? What happens when the person you trust most suddenly becomes the source of feelings you never dared to name? And how do you face the world when keeping your secret means risking the one relationship that has always felt like home? Landon adjusted the straps of his backpack one last time before slamming the trunk of his SUV. The Colorado morning air was crisp with the promise of pine and adventure, but his stomach twisted in a way that had nothing to do with the altitude. At 25, he had built a quiet life in Denver, designing book covers for indie authors, and pretending the ache in his chest was just routine. Wyatt had been part of that routine since their freshman year at the University of Colorado, when the tall, broad-shouldered construction worker had dropped his tray in the cafeteria and laughed it off like it was the best joke of the semester. They had been inseparable ever since hikes, weekend barbecues, late-night talks about everything except the one thing Landon could never say out loud. Wyatt stood by his own truck, now grinning under the brim of a faded Rockies cap. "You ready for this, or are you still overthinking the gear list like last time?" His voice carried that easy confidence that always made Landon's pulse skip even after 7 years of friendship. Behind him, the other two guys, Jake and Marcus, were already arguing over who got the cooler with the better beer. The plan was simple: 4 friends, 4 days in Rocky Mountain National Park, celebrating Wyatt's promotion to site supervisor. No girls, no drama, just the mountains and the kind of male bonding that always felt safe until it didn't. They drove the winding roads with windows down and country music blasting. Landon kept his eyes on the passing evergreens, trying not to notice how Wyatt's arm rested along the seat back or how his laugh filled the cab. By the time they reached the trailhead, the sun was high, and the group fell into the familiar rhythm of setting up camp. 2 tents had been packed, but Jake's girlfriend had called at the last minute, begging him to come home early for some family emergency. Marcus offered to share with Jake, leaving Landon and Wyatt with the smaller 2-person tent. "You two have been roommates in worse conditions," Marcus joked, tossing the rain fly at them. Wyatt shrugged like it was nothing. Landon forced a smile and told himself it was nothing too. The first afternoon passed in a blur of hiking to Emerald Lake and skipping stones across the water. Wyatt led the way, pointing out trails he remembered from childhood trips with his dad. Landon trailed behind, watching the way the sunlight caught in Wyatt's hair and wondering for the 1000th time why he could never just be normal about it. Back at camp, they built a fire and passed around cold beers while the sky turned orange, then deep purple. Stories flowed easily: old college pranks, bad first dates, the time Wyatt had almost proposed to his high school girlfriend before realizing he wasn't ready. Landon listened, nodding at the right moments, but inside he felt the familiar wall rising, the one that kept his truth locked away because admitting it might cost him the only person who had ever made him feel seen. As the fire died down, they crawled into the tent. The space was tighter than Landon remembered, their sleeping bags laid side by side, with barely a foot between them. Wyatt kicked off his boots and stretched out with a contented sigh. "Man, this feels good. No work emails, no deadlines, just us and the stars." Landon muttered agreement and switched off the lantern. In the dark, he listened to Wyatt's breathing, slow, and even while his own heart hammered against his ribs. One night. For days. He could survive that. He had to. The first hints of dawn filtered through the nylon when Wyatt shifted in his sleep and his arm brushed Landon's shoulder. It was nothing: accidental contact between friends who had shared hotel rooms and car rides for years. Yet Landon lay perfectly still, cataloging the warmth, the faint scent of campfire smoke on Wyatt's flannel, and the terrifying realization that this closeness felt different now. Different in a way that made the walls he had built feel suddenly paper thin. He closed his eyes and prayed for the trip to stay simple. But deep down, he already knew nothing about their friendship would ever be simple again. Morning light spilled across the tent floor, turning everything golden. Wyatt woke first, stretching with a groan that echoed off the nylon walls. Coffee time before the others steal all the good stuff. He crawled out, leaving Landon alone with the echo of that casual touch from the night before. Landon stayed still for another minute, letting the cool mountain air chase away the remnants of restless dreams. He had spent half the night replaying every laugh, every shared glance, wondering if Wyatt had noticed the way he froze when their shoulders met. Probably not. Wyatt had always been the straight one, the guy who dated cheerleaders in high school and talked about settling down with a wife and kids someday. Landon was just the reliable best friend, the one who remembered birthdays and listened without judgment. That was supposed to be enough. Outside, the camp was alive with the clatter of pots and the smell of instant coffee. Marcus and Jake were already planning the day's hike to Sky Pond. Wyatt handed Landon a steaming mug, their fingers brushing again. "You look like you didn't sleep much. Too excited about the bears or what?" The teasing was light, but Landon's cheeks burned. He laughed it off and changed the subject to the trail map. The group set off single file through the forest, the conversation flowing from fantasy football to the latest Marvel movie. Wyatt walked beside Landon, pointing out a deer track, here a perfect climbing route there. Every step felt charged, like the air itself knew the secret Landon was carrying. By midday, they reached the lake and collapsed on the rocks, sharing trail mix and stories. Jake started in on his latest girlfriend drama, and Marcus ribbed Wyatt about his string of short-lived relationships. "Come on, man, when are you going to find the one who sticks?" Wyatt shrugged, tossing a pebble into the water. "I don't know. Maybe I'm just not built for that whole settle-down thing yet. Feels like something's missing every time." His eyes flicked to Landon for half a second, and then away. Landon's heart stuttered. Missing. The word hung in the air like an invitation he couldn't accept. He changed the subject, quickly asking about Wyatt's new job responsibilities, but the moment lingered in his mind all the way back to camp. That evening, the fire crackled higher than the night before. They roasted marshmallows, and the talk turned deeper. Wyatt spoke about his dad's expectations, the pressure to be the tough, reliable son who never showed weakness. Landon shared just enough about his own family, the conservative parents back in Nebraska who still sent him church bulletins, and asked when he was bringing a nice girl home. He left out the part where he had stopped going home for holidays because the lies were getting too heavy. Wyatt listened the way he always did, head tilted, eyes steady. "You know you can tell me anything, right? We've been through too much crap together for secrets." The words were kind, but they sliced through Landon like a knife. He nodded, swallowing the truth that burned in his throat. Later in the tent, the silence felt heavier. Wyatt lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. "Hey, Lon, what if we just stayed out here forever? No bosses, no family drama, just this." Landon turned toward him in the dark. "Yeah, sounds pretty perfect." Their voices were soft, barely above a whisper. Wyatt's hand rested near the edge of his sleeping bag, close enough that Landon could feel the warmth. Neither moved. Neither spoke the words that might change everything. But the possibility hung between them like the stars outside the tent flap. Landon closed his eyes and let the mountain night wrap around him, wondering how much longer he could keep pretending. The line between friendship and something more had never blurred. The storm arrived without warning. One minute the tent was quiet under a clear sky, the next the wind howled and rain hammered the nylon like angry fists. Thunder rolled through the valley, shaking the ground. Wyatt sat up, instantly alert. "That came out of nowhere. You okay?" Landon's pulse raced, but he kept his voice steady. "Yeah, just loud." They scrambled to secure the rain fly, working together in the dark, their shoulders bumping, elbows brushing. Lightning flashed, illuminating Wyatt's face, tense and focused. For a moment, Landon forgot the storm, forgot everything except how close they were and how safe he felt, even as the world outside raged. They settled back into their bags, but sleep was impossible. The tent shuddered with every gust, and the temperature dropped fast. Wyatt shivered audibly. "Man, it's freezing. My sleeping bag isn't cutting it." Without thinking, Landon shifted closer. "Come on, share mine for a bit. Body heat, right?" The words were out before he could stop them. Wyatt hesitated only a second, then slid over until their sides pressed together. The contact was innocent, practical survival against the cold. Yet Landon's entire body lit up like the lightning outside. Wyatt's arm draped across his chest almost accidentally, and his breathing slowed. "Thanks, Lon. This is better." Hours passed in that shared warmth. The storm eased into a steady rain, and their conversation drifted to places it had never gone. Wyatt talked about feeling stuck in his life, the girlfriends who never felt quite right, the pressure to be the guy everyone expected. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm chasing something that isn't even me." Landon listened, heart pounding. The words felt like a door cracking open. He spoke carefully about his own loneliness, the nights he spent wondering why he never clicked with any girl, the fear that he would always be on the outside looking in. Wyatt didn't pull away. Instead, his hand tightened on Landon's shoulder. "You're not alone in that. Not with me." The rain softened to a whisper. In the quiet, Wyatt turned his head, their faces inches apart. You ever feel like the world is telling you who you're supposed to be, but your heart keeps arguing back? Landon's breath caught. This was the moment, the one he had imagined in 1,000 what-if scenarios. He could lie again, or he could finally tell the truth. The tent felt smaller than ever, the mountains outside suddenly vast and indifferent. He chose the truth. Every single day, Wyatt. Especially when I'm with you. The words hung there, fragile and electric. Wyatt didn't speak, but he didn't move away either. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away the old boundaries one drop at a time. Morning light revealed a transformed campsite. Puddles glistened everywhere, and the air smelled fresh like possibility. Wyatt crawled out of the tent, first moving a little slower than usual. Landon followed, heart still racing from the confession that had changed the night into something irreversible. They didn't speak about it right away. Instead, they joined Marcus and Jake for breakfast, acting normal, packing the damp gear and planning the day's shorter hike. But the tension was there in every glance, every careful distance they kept. On the trail, Wyatt fell back to walk beside Landon. Last night, what you said, I didn't see it coming. His voice was low enough that the others couldn't hear. Landon's stomach dropped. I know. I'm sorry if it messed things up. Wyatt shook his head, kicking a pine cone ahead. It didn't mess anything up. It just made me think. A lot. They walked in silence for a mile, the forest closing around them like a confessional. Wyatt admitted the warmth in the tent had felt different, the way Landon's presence had always felt different, but he had never named it. I've dated girls my whole life because that's what you do, right? But with you, it's like I don't have to pretend. The confession hung between them, heavier than the backpacks. Back at camp, the others noticed the shift, joking that the storm had made them tent buddies for life. Wyatt laughed, but his eyes kept finding Landon's. That night, the fire burned low and the group turned in early, leaving the two of them alone. Wyatt sat across the flames. I'm scared, Lon. Scared of what this means for us, scared of what people will say. My dad would lose his mind. Your family too. Landon nodded. The fear was familiar territory. I've been scared for years. But telling you, it felt like breathing for the first time. They talked until the fire was ash. Wyatt reached across and squeezed Landon's hand once, quick and firm. I don't know what happens next, but I know I don't want to lose you. The touch lingered long after Wyatt let go. Inside the tent, they lay side by side again, not touching, but closer than ever. The misunderstanding from the storm had cleared, leaving only raw honesty and the terrifying knowledge that their friendship had crossed a line they could never uncross. Sleep came slowly, each man wrestling with the new shape of their world. The drive back to Denver felt endless. Jake and Marcus rode in the other truck, leaving Landon and Wyatt alone with the silence that now carried weight. Wyatt gripped the wheel, eyes on the road, but his mind clearly elsewhere. We need to figure this out before life gets in the way again. Landon agreed, but the words felt inadequate. Back in the city, the real world rushed in, work deadlines, family texts, the girlfriend Wyatt had been casually seeing. She called that first night, asking when he was free for dinner. Wyatt hesitated on the phone, glancing at Landon across the apartment they sometimes shared on weekends. I'll let you know. The days blurred into quiet agony. Landon threw himself into design projects, trying to outrun the questions. Wyatt texted late at night, simple messages that said everything and nothing. Can't stop thinking about the tent. Miss talking to you like that. They met for coffee in a quiet corner booth, and the conversation poured out. Wyatt described the confusion, the way he had started noticing men in a new light, the fear that admitting anything would upend his entire identity. I'm not saying I'm gay. I'm saying I feel something for you that I've never felt for anyone. Landon's heart soared and broke at the same time. They agreed to take it slow, no labels, no pressure, just space to figure out what their friendship had become. But pressure came anyway. Landon's parents visited unexpectedly and noticed the change in his voice when he mentioned Wyatt. You two spend an awful lot of time together, honey. Everything okay? The question carried layers of expectation. Wyatt's father called about a family barbecue and casually asked if he was bringing a date. Wyatt dodged, but the weight settled heavier. One evening, they hiked a local trail near Denver, just the two of them. At the overlook, Wyatt stopped. I'm tired of hiding, Lon. Not from the world, yet, but from myself. That night in the tent woke me up. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the city lights flicker below. The decision crystallized there. They would face whatever came next together, not as the old friends, but as something new and honest. Months passed, and the seasons turned. The initial shock gave way to careful steps forward. Wyatt ended things with his girlfriend gently honest about needing time to understand himself. Landon came out to his parents in a tear-filled phone call, and though it was messy, the love remained. Their friend group adjusted slowly, Marcus offering quiet support, Jake cracking nervous jokes that eventually turned sincere. The camping trip became legend, the night that changed everything. They returned to the mountains the following summer, just the two of them. The same tent, the same trail, but everything different. Around the fire, Wyatt reached for Landon's hand openly this time. "I used to think love had to look one way. You showed me it can look like us." Landon smiled, the ache in his chest finally easing into peace. They talked about the future, the challenges still ahead, the family dinners that would require courage, the world that might not understand. But they also talked about the joy, the freedom of finally being seen. Back in Denver, life settled into a new rhythm: shared apartment, shared secrets, shared dreams. The internal wars quieted, replaced by a steady strength forged in that stormy tent. They had faced misunderstanding, betrayal from their own fears, and the societal weight that tried to pull them apart. In the end, the choice to stay true to their hearts had rewritten their stories in the most beautiful way. This journey taught me that the bravest thing any of us can do is listen to the quiet voice inside when it whispers that love doesn't follow rules. Landon and Wyatt remind us that friendship can bloom into something deeper when we stop hiding and start choosing honesty even when it terrifies us. The real lesson is simple: never let fear decide who you are allowed to become. The right people, the right version of yourself will meet you on the other side of that one terrifying night.